Good morning. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hi, it's Monday. I don't even know what day it is. Monday, the 20th of January, and it's 2025, and here we are in the middle of the Passion Translation Minor Prophets devotion. This is maybe day 50. Yeah, this is day 50. 50 days with you all for this devotion. And we're in the book of Micah, which is the middle of our book. We're on page 241. No, we're on a couple pages before that, 237 in chapter 6 of Micah. Good morning, Lori. Yes, it's inauguration day. Um, what a what a blessing today is going to be. Hello, Amy. Um, so we have two more chapters in Micah. We're on chapter 6. And then tomorrow will be chapter 7, Tuesday. And then I'll need a little bit of time to prepare for our next book, which is Nahum. Nahum will be going through the introduction, and then I'm just looking here. I think there's, three chapters in Nahum. So I don't know. Usually it takes me a couple days. I would say Wednesday and Thursday I would be preparing, but possibly starting Friday morning. Excuse me. With the introduction. But today we're in Micah chapter 6. And this is Yahweh's indictment of Israel to start off in the chapter. And again, an indictment is a formal charge of a serious crime. And so God Himself is like in the courtroom with Israel. And what he says here in these plain terms that Brian Simmons' team puts the Passion Translation in really just breaks my heart to see God have to talk to people like this. But anyway, it got me on this whole loop this morning, and I'll maybe discuss that with you. But let's get started reading. It says, "Now listen to what Yahweh says. Stand up and state your case." So we're in the courtroom with God. "The mountains will be your witnesses." Oh, he invites the mountains to witness this. "And let the hills hear your defense," or your voice. Listen, mountains, to Yahweh's accusation. Pay attention, you enduring foundations of the earth. They are all listening to his voice. I tell you, the word of the Lord goes out into the earth, and it shakes even what we think cannot be shaken. Even the rocks will cry out if we don't. They hear him because they know their Creator. "I, Yahweh, have an indictment against my people, and I will prosecute my case against Israel. My people, what have I done to deserve your neglect?" This is what hurt me to read this. What have I done to deserve this, he's saying. How have I made you tired of me? Oh, answer me, God says. Did I not rescue you from Egypt and ransom you from slavery? I sent Moses, Aaron, and Miriam to lead you. He handpicks and appoints people to lead his people, which he's doing today again. Please remember this, my people. King Balak of Moab planned to curse you. And how did the prophet Balaam, son of Beor, answer him? He spoke Yahweh's blessing over you. Remember how I parted the Jordan so that you could cross over from Acacia to Gilgal? Now you should know through all my saving acts that I have treated you fairly, or treated you righteously. All right, so this is the opening paragraph, and then here is Micah's response. What should I bring when I enter Yahweh's presence and bow down before God Most High? Should I approach him with burnt offerings, with year-old calves to sacrifice? Will he be pleased with thousands of rams and with endless streams of olive oil? Should I offer him my firstborn for my wrongdoing, my own offspring for the sins of my life? No, listen, O Adam's offspring. Yahweh has made it plain to you what is best. He's shown you what he really is longing for from you. What is God really longing for from us? Only to promote justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. This is the most famous text in Micah and one of the most famous texts in the Old Testament. Verses, I should say. He has shown you, O man, what is good and pleasing to the Lord, but to promote justice, to love kindness or mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. All right, that's the second section. We're going to come back to these. The third section is Yahweh's punishment, Yahweh's voice calling out to the city. Wise is the one who fears the name of Yahweh. So pay attention, O tribe, to the one who called you together. Can I overlook the treasures that fill the homes of evil people who cheated others? They use false measures, which I despise. Do you really expect me to forgive those who cheat others? With a bag of wrong weights and dishonest scales? The wealthy are steeped in violence. That's the word for Hamas, which we talked about before in another book. And we just saw the release of 3 hostages yesterday. The wealthy are steeped in violence, and the people are liars and speak deceitfully. As for me, I will deal you a crippling blow to ruin you for your sins. You will eat but not be satisfied. You will still be hungry. You will acquire but save nothing. Because what you save, I will send your enemies to destroy. You will plant crops but not reap a harvest. This would be so frustrating. You will press oils for its oil and never be able to rub it on yourselves. And tread grapes, but never drink the wine. For you live by the standards of the dynasty of Omri, which we'll talk about in a minute. And you follow the evil ways of Ahab and his household, which included his wife, the wicked Queen Jezebel. Because you walk after their example, you force me to make an example out of you. I will hand you over to ruin and make you a laughingstock among the nations. People everywhere will treat you with contempt. Wow. Okay, so there's 3 sections here that we want to dive into. The first one is Yahweh's indictment of Israel, his formal charge of their serious crimes. All right, so let's read this note under, we're on page 237, underneath this chapter 6, in verse 1. The reading, state your case, which is in verse 1. It says, stand up and state your case. Translates the Hebrew verb rib. Now, I couldn't remember if I read this somewhere else with you. I didn't look back if we've already discussed this word rib, or if it was just me remembering reading this when I was preparing a week ago or so. If we've already talked about this, we're just going to talk about it again, but if not, this is interesting. The word R-I-B, which we usually think of as a bone in our side, which made me think of Eve being taken from the rib of Adam, but I don't even know if it correlates, to be honest. Anyway, state your case is the Hebrew verb rib. Micah 6, verses 1 through 5, constitutes what Old Testament scholars call a rib oracle. That is, a covenant lawsuit. Covenant lawsuit. I think like a marriage lawsuit would be like this. The Hebrew term rib occurs as both a verb and a noun. In a number of contexts, the verb rib carries the meaning to conduct or mount a legal case or a lawsuit against someone. As a noun, rib denotes a lawsuit, legal charge, or case, plus other synonymous terms. The essential significance of such an oracle in this context is that Yahweh was launching a formal legal indictment against his people Israel for their violation of the divine covenant law. The assumed setting for such a divine legal prosecution is the heavenly courtroom. In addition, there is the significance of the canonical prophet, functioning as a divinely appointed prosecuting attorney, pleading Yahweh's case against his wayward people. Micah fulfilled this role here formally in chapter 6, and it may also be argued that he executed this role informally throughout his entire prophetic work. The same may be said for the prophet Hosea, who participated in another rib oracle against Israel in Hosea 4 and 5. So we did read about it in Hosea, so we have talked about this word before. For similar uses of the term rib, see Exodus, Deuteronomy, and Jeremiah. Okay, so Micah is fulfilling this role here formally in chapter 6, pleading Yahweh's case for his wayward people. He's a canonical prophet, functioning as a divinely appointed prosecuting attorney. So I don't understand all of this legalities. I feel like I know a little bit more having gone to jury duty last week. But just that God puts us in a courtroom in this chapter and formally in Hosea and probably other places it's saying here in the Bible, in Exodus, Deuteronomy, and Jeremiah, lets me know that he is trying to reach his people even on this playing field of the courtroom. And I don't know why it just breaks my heart that he has to come to us in this way. It shouldn't be that God has to state his case. It should never be that way. I'm sure that the mountains and the hills agree with me. And someday in heaven, we'll see all of this. We'll have so much more understanding and wisdom. The wisdom of the ages we will be granted. And we just ask for that now, Lord, while we're here, the understanding and wisdom that we need to traverse through this life and to understand what's going on and the current day and age. There's so much going on. And anyway, in verse 1, or verses 1 through 5, the notes say that God convenes his courtroom and summons the age-old mountains to be the witnesses to Israel's waywardness. God often met with his people on mountains: Sinai, Nebo, Ebal, Gerizim, Zion, Carmel, and Calvary. You know, I just want to stop for a minute because I just think, how could God want to meet us at a mountain, on a mountaintop? What is the significance? I'm just I'm strange that way in that I always think about creation. I consider creation alive. Every verse that talks about creation's response to God gets my attention. And I think, what is it about? What do the mountains and the hills know? One time, I think I've shared this before in our devotions. One time I was out with my intercessor friends, and we were driving through a remote area here in this county, Shasta County, where we live. It was about a year ago, or maybe a little more than a year ago. And we were up high enough that we were with the redwoods, and we all knew that there was a lot of illegal activity going on in that area, and we were finding it having to do with like the growing of marijuana, like, big farms that the cartel actually run. Shenanigans in the hills. And I just think that I remember being there with them and thinking and saying out loud, I feel like the trees and the forest here are saying, it still makes me cry when I say it out loud, because I knew it was the Lord speaking through me. I said, they're saying to us, we've been waiting for you. We've been waiting for you to come and prophesy into this land, to rid it of this illegality. It's not a small thing that there are, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but it's not a small thing that there are farms and growers that are influencing our population with illegal drugs, or drugs that are going to keep people bound up and addicted and ruining their lives. So I felt like the hills and the trees and the area were saying to us as intercessors, we've been waiting for you. And that is a whole nother talk there, where I'm tying it in because God himself called the mountains as his witnesses here as he spoke to Israel, and he said, you enduring foundations of the earth, you know me. He's saying, you know me. You know my ways. You know what is right, what is righteous, what should be happening, and what shouldn't be happening. So someday it'll all get confirmed that they were pulling for us to come into these areas. I think about where you live, Lori, and I think about the devastation there from the flooding and the hurricane. And I'm so glad that that's going to be addressed now and that people are going to get help. But the intercession and the people that have the ability to turn things around, it's as if the hills and the devastated land is saying, we're waiting for you to come in and speak the word of the Lord over this land, to heal this land. It doesn't take a lot of time or effort to drive out to these places with teams of people who can minister to the land and bring it back into the place that it was supposed to be, the righteousness of God dwelling there. And anyway, that's a whole tangent that I didn't know I was going to get off onto. But now I want to talk to you about verse 4, where it says, did I not rescue you from Egypt and ransom you from slavery? I sent Moses, Aaron, and Miriam to lead you. Well, my daughter's best friend, her name is Miriam. So when I see this name, I always think of her. I just, I pointed out to you when I was reading this earlier that he sent them, Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, to lead the people, and that we need to recognize that God sends people and appoints people to lead us out of bondage and to lead us in the way that we should go. And sometimes it's a woman he uses. And Israel was led out of slavery in part by a woman. And her name was Miriam. She was the older sister of Moses, and she was a prophetess. And this is what really got me here. I love that Brian Simmons and his team bring out these incredible finds, nuggets that another Miriam, had a role in leading us out of our former slavery to sin. For the mother of Jesus was named Miriam, or Mary. And I didn't realize, or if I did, I had forgotten that Mary, let me just read this. The mother of Jesus' real name was Miriam. The name Miriam is the Hebrew form of Mary's name, and the Aramaic form is Maryam, Maryam. It means, the name Miriam has many meanings, including star of the sea, bitterness, or beloved. Christians see parallels between Mary, the mother of Jesus, and Miriam, Moses' older sister, and believe that God chose both women to care for men who led Israel out of slavery and sin. Isn't that incredible? So, good old Mary, mother of Jesus, who had to pay such a huge price for our salvation, she too bared a boatload of grief and sorrow as she watched her 30-year-old son, who she knew all along from birth, was going to have to walk this road. She walked it with him. She had to walk it partially alone, because Joseph passed away, and she had to see Jesus into the last 3 years of his time on the earth, where he brought, where he went through his death on the cross. And so we're not Catholic, but we do owe her a great debt of thanks for walking and not giving up and not giving in to what she wanted. Humanly speaking, she did not want her son to go through this, right? But she followed God, she followed his direction, and she went through with what she was called to do. I wonder what her place is in heaven. It must be extraordinary. Let's see what else we want to read here. Oh my gosh, I loved this word from verse 5. Let's read verse 5. Please remember this, my people. King Balak of Moab planned to curse you, and how did the prophet Balaam, son of Beor, answer him? He spoke Yahweh's blessings over you. Remember how I parted the Jordan so that you could cross over from Acacia to Gilgal? Now you should know through all my saving acts that I have treated you fairly or righteously. The sentence in Hebrew reads from Shittim, or Acacia, to Gilgal. Shittim is short for Abel Shittim, which translates to acacia meadow. Most scholars see a lacuna, a gap, in the Hebrew text here. The obvious inference is a reference to the miracle crossing of the Jordan so that Israel could go from, this is the part I love, this is, obviously they're talking about the crossing over the Jordan, but Israel was going from its last camp in the wilderness, which was Acacia, to her first camp in the promised land, which would be Gilgal. And there was this crossing over, and I don't know how you feel about today, but for me, this is a crossing over for our country. And we are leaving our last camp in the wilderness today with the inauguration and the new era that we're entering into, where there will be significant changes in our country and the world for the better. And we're going to our first camp in the promised land, which is Gilgal. And it is all because of God's faithfulness to us. We're crossing over from our last camp to our, which is the word acacia, again, to our first camp in the Promised Land today, where we will see so many things that should not have been going on in our government will be, first of all, there will be the dealing of our border being secured. And this is important for the safety of our nation. And so I'm just rejoicing. I'm about to, when I leave you today, I'm going to be I've invited some friends over for breakfast. We're going to have some breakfast together and watch the inauguration and thank God for His mercy, which leads us to verse 8. This famous verse that He has made plain to us what He longs for us to promote justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with our God. And this word kindness is hesed, and it means mercy, which is this beautiful word that includes the meanings of loyalty, goodness, kindness, mercy, faithfulness, love, and graciousness. I wanted to, and then in verse 9 it says, Yahweh's voice is calling out to the city. And I wanted to read Proverbs 1, verse 20 and 21. Let me see if it's still in my phone. I'll have to bring it up again. That's fine. And Proverbs 1, verses 20 and 21 say, Wisdom cries aloud in the street. In the open square she raises her voice. Down the crowded ways she calls out. At the city gate she utters her words. And this it says in verse 9, Yahweh's voice is calling out to the city. Wise is the one who fears the name of Yahweh, so pay attention, O tribe, to the one who called you together. Wisdom cries aloud in the street. Wisdom is crying out today in the street, raising her voice down the crowded ways, calling out from the city gates. And then over on page 240, again, we see this in verse 12. The wealthy are steeped in violence, and that word is Hamas. We were just talking about how we've seen 3 hostages released yesterday, which is incredible. Those 3 women that came home, and more on the way, which is so grateful. So sad that they had to be there these 400 and something days, and we just pray that they will be treated carefully, gently, as they recover from this. And we just pray that trauma will be far from them, that the love of God would envelop them, and that they would be at peace in their very DNA, that He would bring back a sense of peace and joy again in their life. Yes, and then down on in verse 16, I wanted to just go over this word Omri with you. It says, you live by the standards of the dynasty of Omri, and that is, Omri was a king that ruled in the northern kingdom of Israel for about 11 years, and his son Ahab followed him for another 21 years. The Omride dynasty held the throne longer than any other family in the northern kingdom, and they were known for their wickedness. So these people for 32 years ruled in wickedness, and then Ahab, his son, was married to Jezebel, and they were he was comparing them to this evil, wicked dynasty. They encouraged people to worship foreign gods. You can see that in 1 Kings. Ahab's evil sons ruled after him. And it was 1,000 years after this happened that Micah came out with this verse here in chapter 6, bringing them up, comparing them to what was, happening then. And so, even though 1,000 years had passed, they had not forgotten what it had been like for the people after the dynasty had ended. And God says, you walk after their example? Gosh, no, let's turn things around, like what's happening today in our country. You force me to make an example out of you. I don't know what, it seems like so many people are being pardoned that, people well known, like, never mind who, but well known people and, prisoners that are murderers. I don't know. So many people being released last minute by our, I can say, former President Biden. And we have to leave it in God's hands as to what he's going to do with these decisions and wicked decisions. What God will do with the president, former president, and what he will do with these people who are, like the president's son, who should be paying for their crimes. But anyway, that does it for today. We're a little bit over time at 8, and I have people here in a few minutes at my house, so I need to go. But I want to bless you again today. I want to see who's on here. Yes and amen. Yes, we're crossing over today. How exciting. I just want to bless you that the Lord would be with you today, and that you would be able to trust him in everything, that you would be able to walk with him, that you'd be able to walk with him through all of this, what's going on, that you'd keep your heart pure and undefiled. And I bless you with discernment and wisdom in the coming days. And have a good day. I will see you for chapter 7 tomorrow. God bless you, love you, and bye-bye, everyone.